Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. We have a fight with Daniel Dubois taking on Joe Joyce at the O2 in London on April 11th, confirmed this morning on Good Morning Britain, so a national platform in the UK to promote the fight between Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois. We all knew that this was coming and the announcement was coming soon, but it's good to have this one made, one of the few big fights in 2020 that is actually confirmed. Some others on the horizon, and obviously we're also looking forward to Wilder Fury 2. So this is a very good fight. Two up-and-coming prospects. Daniel Dubois, 13-0, Joe Joyce, 10-0. They turned pro roughly around the same time in the same heavyweight stable, both looking to make waves on the world scene. Both are at a certain level where it's hard to get fights for them that are of any note and meaning at this point because they are dangerous. So taking on each other, this is no mean feat, and it's going to be, a very, very good fight. Hard to call, but we'll get to the announcement, the reaction, and the press release quotes as well. So you can see here on screen. So this is from Good Morning Britain's Twitter feed. So obviously the fight was announced on Good Morning Britain this morning. You have Frank Warren on the left of screen here, then Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce and his manager Sam Jones to the right. Exclusively announced on Good Morning Britain, so a good national platform and audience, exposing it to a casual audience, which could be key to help selling the fight. Also, Daniel Dubois on his social media, so he's got a video here, but you can see the graphic, which obviously leads off that BT box office, so it's pay-per-view. Dubois says, "This will be the most devastating performance of my career. See you on April 11th at Joe Joyce Boxing. Bring your sleeping bag." And a bunch of hashtags. And Joyce himself also responding on social media with the promotional poster saying, "This is the fight the fans have been calling for, and I'm delighted it's signed and sealed. April 11th, I will deliver at the O2 London when I seek and destroy Daniel Dubois. Follow the journey on social media, yada, yada, yada." Sam Jones, Joyce's manager, he says, "This is the fight you all wanted, so this is the fight you've got. Seek and destroy. Hashtag Juggernaut v Dynamite." Might have to work on the hashtag. That's a bit of a mouthful, and especially when I type that one quickly. But on to the press release proper. So from frankwarren.com, you can see here, promotional poster. We'll skip past some of this, but actually there's going to be a whole bunch of belts on the line because Daniel Dubois, currently the British Commonwealth, WBC Silver, WBO International Champion. So there's a lot on the line here, and Joe Joyce with the WBA Gold Champion belt. He's also the former Commonwealth title holder, as this denotes here, and WBA Continental Champion, and ranked number 1 by the EBU. He has been ordered to face Filip Hrgovic in the EBU, but clearly that's not going to be happening. He won't be holding that ranking for too long, given he's going elsewhere now, fighting Daniel Dubois. But getting down to the quotes here. Daniel Dubois says, "I think I'm better than Joe in every department. I have a better jab, I have better movement, I have more power. The only thing Joe has over me is experience, but he's never boxed anyone as young and hungry as me. This will be the most devastating performance of my career." Joyce, 34, okay, so we'll get down to his quotes further down here. He says, "This is a massive fight. There's no denying that there's a lot on the line, both sides, but experience is something you can't buy, and I've got tons of it, and I believe it'll play a huge factor in this fight." And Frank Warren, he says, "People always talk about wanting the best to fight the best. Well, on February 22, we have number 1 and number 2 heavyweights in the world settling a score in Las Vegas. Then April, we will have the 2 best up-and-coming heavyweights in the world putting it on the line at the O2 Arena." Okay, Frank Warren might be slightly stretching it there. Maybe they're not quite number 1 and number 2, but they're certainly, within the top 6. Daniel Dubois might be the number 1 prospect coming through in most people's minds. So he continues, "It's a fight that needs to be made to see which man is ready to challenge the elite at the top end of the division and which one will reset and go again. This is one both men could easily have avoided and navigated to a less perilous route to the top, but they wanted to get it on and give fans what they wanted to see. When that first bell rings, it will be an edge of seat stuff right from the off. The contrast in styles will be fascinating. Daniel being a classic banger with strong fundamentals and a ramrod jab that gets better all the time. Joe has got a style all of his own and comes at his opponents relentlessly from every angle. Can Daniel withstand the swarming force of Joe? Can Joe absorb the bludgeoning power of Daniel? We'll soon find out on April 11, and it's absolutely one not to be missed. And Sam Jones, he says, well, we've already got a comment from him earlier, so we'll move on from there. So, yeah, my thoughts on this, great fight. It was one of these fights that I just expected they were going to marinate a little while longer because Frank Warren does have a tendency to do that. He's not scared to put his fighters together. We saw that with Nathan Gorman and Daniel Dubois. But this one felt, because it was going to be on pay-per-view, that maybe they would need to build it a little bit more. It could be at the end of the year, but obviously for whatever reason they've decided to pull the trigger. Both sides obviously wanted it and wanted it now. So this is really good for fans. In terms of who I think is going to win this one, it's an interesting question. I think automatically a lot of fans, because there seems to be, at the moment with Joyce, some fans are down on him and what he can do. They believe he's maybe a bit too slow and sort of ponderous to perhaps be able to keep up and fend off a guy like Daniel Dubois, who is one of the hardest hitting punchers. A very good jab, as mentioned by Frank Warren, which has been improving. His body punching's coming a long way, but let's face it, Daniel Dubois to this point hasn't really faced a lot of stiff competition. It's been very careful matchmaking, right fights at the right time, but some of them have been, some of them at least, have been a little bit soft. We had Fujimoto and obviously Ebenezer Tete, fights that were almost, I don't want to say a waste of time because he picked up various belts along the way, but it's not the sort of fights that prepare you for a guy like Joe Joyce. Who has the better win of the two at the moment? It's hands down Joe Joyce. That Bryant Jennings win is better than anything that is on Daniel Dubois' resume. Daniel Dubois' best win is Nathan Gorman at this point, and maybe you could make a case for Razvan Kajanu, the former title challenger. But he hasn't been pushed and tested in a way that I think Joe Joyce is going to sort of really put him under pressure in this fight. We're probably going to see what Daniel Dubois is actually made of, how good his chin is, because Joe Joyce, although, you know, he seems to be a guy that can throw a punch and it lands 3 days later, he is effective with the volume. It's almost a form of defense, and a guy like Bryant Jennings spoke after the fight that he needed to throw more punches, but he just didn't have the opportunity to do so because he was constantly trying to keep Joyce off him. So it's going to be interesting to see how Daniel Dubois is going to approach opening Joe Joyce up. And I think he will probably try go to the body. There were some signs in that Bryant Jennings fight that Joyce can be vulnerable to the body. So I think Daniel Dubois will really go for a body attack in this fight. You know, try to bring his hands down a bit. And we saw Joe Joyce did that. He really grimaced in that first round against Jennings. Jennings just couldn't take advantage. But if Dubois does hurt Joyce, he's a clinical finisher. And the jab will be a key weapon, but I don't think people should discount Joyce and his chances in there, because his experience is actually going to count for something. Daniel Dubois has had mostly, hand-picked opponents that haven't been able to do too much against him. Joyce is a live opponent, and we're going to really see where Dubois is at. There was a lot of hype surrounding a guy like F.A. Ajagba, for example, but when they put him in with a guy like Ali Erendemirezhian, it became clear that maybe he wasn't as advanced and as polished as fans had been led to believe because of the prior fights. Will we see something there similar in the Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce fight? I mean, I think it's close to a 50-50. I might be slightly leaning towards Daniel Dubois to take this one, but I'm probably giving more of a chance to Joyce than a lot of fans. I'm sure some people are going to think Daniel Dubois wipes the floor here, but I think this is going to be a tough and torrid fight, and I do think body punching from Daniel Dubois is going to be a key weapon. What do you make of this? Great fight. Love it. Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.